Welcome to the Low Carb Athlete Podcast, where we focus on discussing topics to help you burn fat, optimize health, and improve performance in life and sports. Transform the whole you from the inside out with the holistic method. Let's dive in. Here's your host, Debbie Potts.
Hey guys, it's Debbie, and I am going to talk to Wade Lightheart today. He's one of the co-founders of BiOptimizers. I follow them on social media. Usually Instagram is my go-to place. It's quick and easy and fun, but Wade is an interesting person we've talked to, a year or so ago. He's on my show, and brought him back again to talk about how we can burn fat, improve our performance in daily life and our favorite athletic sports. But as you'll hear me talk about all year, this year especially, is how we can improve the aging process. I'm all about longevity because I turn 50. I can't say 50. But I can say 50. I turned November this year, and I am all about getting healthy on the inside and out, as I've been working on the past 8 years, and really working on how I can, live my best life the second half of my life. And I am on a mission. So hopefully if you're in your late 40s and you're getting ready to turn into the next age group, you are on that mission as well. And Wade has some great information to share with you how you can do that, taking control of your own health, taking ownership of your health. And as I can keep saying on social media, self-care is self-love. If we don't love ourselves and respect ourselves enough that we don't take the steps to be healthy, as I say in the holistic method, working on your nutrition and your exercise. Yeah, we all know that. But what about the other things? They're so important to work on. Sleep, huge, right? Huge to our health. And working on stress reduction, as I talk a lot on the show, is a internal hidden stressors that are chronic and you don't even know they exist unless you do lab testing, as well as our obvious external stressors, or maybe not so obvious, that we have going on every day. But then also movement. Even if you work out every morning, I want to know that you're moving throughout the day. Just because you ran 45 minutes and did some speed work in the morning or whatever your workout was, are you moving breakfast, lunch, and dinner? As I say, and I wish I could keep credit for this, but breakfast, lunch, dinner doesn't mean eat. It means move times, not meal times. And I think it's really important for us to move at lunchtime, move at dinner time. Don't always eat. So movement's a huge part of being healthy, but also digestion and gut health. And that's a big thing what we'll talk about today, as well as hydration, and a biggie, especially this past year of the pandemic, is happiness, gratitude, playing, laughing, ideally hugging people, feeling that love, and you get the oxytocin hormone that makes you feel good. And I was actually just reading last night a book from Dr. Anna Kabeka on the hormone fix and how you can lower your cortisol by increasing your oxytocin hormone by, hugging people and laughing and feeling good. So going back to Wade is going to talk about how we can burn fat, how we can support our low carb food plan based on making sure we have the right nutrients to help digestion. We want to make sure we have enough acidity in our stomach. We want to make sure we have those digestive enzymes supporting our bile flow, lymphatic system, detoxing. There's all these different things that we need to add into our diet because we don't get those nutrients, micronutrients in our food plan, in our soil. So it's really hard to just think you're going to get all the supplements, all the nutrients you need from your real food diet. But there's some things we need to add in. And I know people kind of don't want to take supplements. As I work on their health coaching program, we identify these imbalances, and we need sometimes to kickstart the organs and kickstart the process of digestion by aiding in digestion and healing the gut and rebuilding this microbiome diversity. And we'll talk about magnesium today as well as Capex that will help you burn fat and how we need probiotics and all that. So Wade is really knowledgeable in all that. He's also the host of his own awesome health podcast. He is, one of the authorities on natural nutrition and training methods. He's actually a 3-time Canadian national All Natural Bodybuilding Champion who's competed as a vegetarian. So opposite as my friends Danny Vega and the Savage podcast, they'll talk about carnivore. And so it's the opposite, which makes sense. As I always say, N equals 1. We're all different genetics. So we want to look at that when we're not saying one diet fits all, but the real food diet help you burn fat is what we'll talk about today. But Wade has got lots of information to share with us. Also on their website, you'll see they have lots of bonuses. They have a great book that they put out this year that you can get when you order supplements. So you can head to their website, BiOptimizers.com, and you can use our code, the Low Carb Athlete, to get a discount on your order if you want to get anything. They also have a biological optimization blueprint book when you order over $150, and you get a free bonus gift for orders over $400. So if you go all out shopping on there, you can get some good freebies, and just make sure you get save your 10% code, the Low Carb Athlete. So remember, we want to work on biohacking, so to speak, but it's an N equal 1 experiment. Working on optimizing your health is really not being stuck in the cycle of trial and error, but getting some lab testing, I always think is essential. That's what I do now. And it's really important to see the whole picture, what's going on in science of just guessing. So testing and not guessing, then getting a specific plan for you based on your genetics and based on your lab test results and nutritional therapy analysis is really important to get a specific comprehensive plan for you as an individual versus just hearing all this information, all these podcasts and trying it all out and spending a lot of money, wasting, months to years trying to figure out what's best for you. And sometimes we just need a little bit more information at first. So let's talk about how we can burn fat, what nutrients we need to help kickstart digestion, and dive into all that. So enjoy the show. Again, please reach out if you have any questions, comments, suggestions. Go to debbiepotts.net and we can connect that way. All right, enjoy. Hey guys, I have Wade on the show today to talk about keto, low carb, and nutrient deficiencies that you may be experiencing and don't know it unless you test. So we talk all the time here about testing and not guessing, and really ways you can learn how to burn fat, optimize your health, and improve performance for life as well as your sport. So I'm all about performance longevity. So I wanted to have Wade come back on the show. I think it's been over a year since you're on here talking about BiOptimizers, and I'm all about optimizing our health. So you're kind of the good guy to talk to about optimization.
Oh, thanks. It's been great to be here.
So you've been probably busy the past year. Any things you've been working on the past year with our whole pandemic in the world of getting people healthy and creating awareness of how to get healthy?
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of things that we did is Matt and I released in January our Blueprint for Biological Optimization, which is a book that basically explains a systematic approach for running tests related to one of 3 areas which we focus on in our company. Either it's performance, it's aesthetics, or it's for health. And ideally, you people are going to kind of focus on one of those areas at given stages or times in their lives. So we put that together because, every diet and every lifestyle has certain performance parameters and certain advantages and disadvantages. And, Matt's a keto guy. I'm a plant-based guy. We're as far on the spectrum. So people are always curious, well, how does that work for optimization? And we're like, well, let us explain our process and why, even though we have almost opposite diet philosophies, how we got to what was optimal for him and optimal for me was a part of that process. So we wanted to share that process with the population, and it's getting rave reviews. People love it and they're excited about it because it can get really confusing with all the competing levels of information. And the only thing that's important, I always say, is N of 1. When we can read all the studies, we can do all the experiments, but at the end of the day, it's what's going to work for the individual to get them the results that they want. And, that's why you need these kind of podcasts and listening to kind of share some insights about how we were able to come to these conclusions.
Yeah, no, I see it all the time. And I keep trying to write that N=1 or bio individuals, or no one size fits all. And I keep trying to share my story that happened, starting 2013. I was doing fasted workouts. I was low carb. I was doing a lot of healthy fats and working out a lot, but I had financial stress running my own business, chronic stress from exercising a lot. I was training a high level for Ironmans. And so it just shows that it is N=1, and you can be doing low carb, doing keto, doing carnivore, whatever works for you to burn fat. But if you have deficiencies in your body at different levels, hidden internal chronic stressors, you're still going to have not the best results, right? It's just so crazy.
Yeah. And, lifestyles are dynamic. So you could be going and be just fine on your program and you've got everything kind of optimized. And then, life happens. Like COVID, for example, created an incredible amount of changes in people's lives, kids being home, stress levels, economic uncertainty for a lot of people, a lot of political division. Then we got cancel culture and we're all dependent on it. So there's life has changed a lot in the last 12 months. And to think that you're not going to be impacted by those changes, whether that's positive or negative, it would be highly unlikely. I think most of us have recognized that our lives have changed significantly. And of course, oftentimes our diet and our lifestyle parameters have to change.
Mm-hmm. And so today we want to talk about how, actually how keto works. Are you keto being vegan? Are you kind of measuring your blood sugar? What do you do to get your body burn fat?
One of the major, there's two different ways that you can kind of go by it. And, Matt, who is the major expert in keto, he's been doing keto now for 26 years, I think.
Wow.
He did it early stuff with the Dr. D. Pasquale and the anabolic diet, which is the first versions. And of course, if you go back historically, Vince Gironda, or Gironda, depending on how you pronounce that, who was a Hollywood super coach starting in the late 1940s, moving up into the 70s and 80s, wrote a book called The Wild Physique. And he cycled between what was an overtly keto diet. He didn't call it keto. Yeah. And then he would do 21 days with his people on keto. And then he would do a 10-day cleansing, alkalizing program. So for most people, a blood sugar monitor and NutriSense or something like that and then if you're doing keto strips or you're doing a keto optimizing, one of the various keto tests to see how much ketones. And there's 3 basic stages that people go through on a ketogenic type diet. There's the adaptive stage, which, people get the keto flu or they go through the challenges, and there's ways of mitigating that. And then there's kind of 6 months to a year where they become really fat adapted. And somewhere between that mark, usually around by the year mark for sure, even if you come off keto, it seems that your body will go back to keto very quickly. So Dom D'Agostino, who is an advisor for our company, explained some of these mechanisms, and Matt has explained it. And so now Matt can even eat carbs. He can eat carbs and he's still producing ketones when he's doing carbs. So
yeah. That's why I like cyclical, doing a 5-2 plan or something on and off. And I think I'm all about sustainability and not dieting. I dieted all high school, early part of college. And just, if you have that mentality, especially, if you were an athlete too, you probably, a lot of people overtrain to burn off those extra calories. And I think it's making it a healthy journey, not some short term. I hear these people, I did keto and didn't work for me, or I changed this, did that, but they made it like a diet. So it just lasted maybe 30 days and they didn't really create this new type of eating habits that's sustainable, that's just this is what I do. I don't even think that I'm intermittent fasting. It just happens because I ate the right foods for my body. So anything with that, you feel like it just the N equals 1 is your philosophy to get people to burn fat? Is their main goal and be metabolically flexible?
The goal, I believe, in any case, is to become metabolically flexible. Yeah. Going back to diets, and I'm going to start with some overarching principles that I've learned over the last 30 plus years in the industry and coaching thousands of people. So you got to start from a wide base. And oftentimes you can look historically and there'll be clues within your background. For example, most people who do very well on ketogenic diets often had high levels of refined carbohydrates and sugars early in life. And I have a theory, and this is an untested theory, that what happens is they actually burn out their carb metabolizing enzymatic pathways. There's also genetic and epigenetic. So for example, if you're from northern climates that were subjected to long periods of food restriction, oftentimes they tend to do very well on ketogenic programs, as opposed to maybe somebody who spent their whole life growing up in the tropics, right? So you have to always look at the historical and genetic aspects. Now, I do believe that if you are in an optimal state of health, that you can easily flip between different diets. And what that means is what a lot of people don't understand is, there's two main sources that you're eating from a social and emotional and psychological points aside. And I don't want to discount those, but you're looking to either build building blocks or energy units. Now, the assumption that everybody makes in a diet strategy is that what I put in my mouth is completely vaporized, digest, absorbed, and utilized by the body. That's not true. And the amount of poorly or not digested food now becomes a potential toxin, which you will experience disruption. So let's go a little bit more specific in relation to someone who's on a low carb diet. So oftentimes, because we live in the modern world, access to refined carbohydrates and things, and the cycles of that come. So people get burning carbohydrates, but their blood sugar kind of goes crazy. They may be have historical aspects of a predisposition for cancer or diabetes, and they start seeing that they're either pre-diabetic or they're having blood sugar metabolisms, or they have to deal with food addictions, and it can't seem like uncontrollable eating and wild swings in maybe how their neurotransmitters are made or that sort of stuff. So they go, okay, I'm going to switch to a keto diet. And they go, okay, great. I start cutting out the carbs. I go through the adaptive phase, and guess what? Their lipolytic pathways, which the enzymatic capability and the probiotics that are present in their gut do very well in metabolizing fats. And that becomes an efficient transfer of energy. And they all of a sudden, the body starts to work correctly for, they're like, oh, I'm not having the mood swings. I'm not having the food cravings. I'm able to sustain a diet for a period of time, et cetera, et cetera. And that's where you always need to be constantly monitoring the feedback, because when you initially make a shift to a new diet program, there's an adaptive phase. Then there's what I call it's almost like a relationship. There's like the honeymoon phase, where it is just the awesome. In other words, all of the benefits of that program are now giving flowers in your life. It's like, you know what I mean? You're enjoying all the things that your previous diet or lack thereof was causing problems have now been eliminated. And there's a caveat in that. And you kind of go down that relationship, but then maybe a year, 18 months, 2 years down the road, other things start to creep up into your challenge, into your physical health or your performance or something. You go, whoa, what's going on here? And you go on the forums and you're looking at the keto things and what's happening. You get a special group, and all of a sudden you start to lose maybe excitement or energy or have difficulty in dealing with that diet. And ultimately what's happened is every diet has specific advantages and disadvantages. Okay. And in that early phase, you're getting all of the advantages because the disadvantages, let's say there was a key nutrient deficiency in the new diet that was accounted for in the old diet. So this is very common, for example, people who switch to vegetarianism, right? They go from their diet, they become a plant-based person, then they go raw. And maybe the process was extremely detoxifying for that person. And they went through a period of 6 months, a year, 2 years, or whatever, and everything was great. They got all the toxins out. They got all these benefits which they associate with the diet, not that they just detoxed from whatever was going on before. Yeah. And then they get to what I call the valley of the diet, like the point of where all of the benefits have really been extracted from that diet. And now the liabilities are starting to expose themselves. And so that's when you start getting smart about your diet and addressing the inherent deficiencies within it. So we're a dietary agnostic. And what I mean by that is I think if a diet is working for someone, stick to it, but try and use some testing and parameters to identify potential holes in that nutrition program and addressing that with supplementation or lifestyle integrations. And I find they'll be a lot more successful over the long term. And then you can start borrowing information from other diets or other strategies to augment your own so that you kind of optimize your overall long-term philosophy.
Yeah, I forgot you're Canadian. You said the borrowing, because remember, I'm from Canada originally, so I caught that word. Borrow versus borrow. So I think a lot of it is, what I find is, one, for sure, looking at ancestry background, like where are you from, looking at genetic SNPs and really getting that information. I've used DNA Fit with people, and I'm learning strategy with Dr. Ben Lynch. And there's so much information you can collect from that for clues, but it is the lifestyle, the epigenetics, and working on their diet, their sleep, their exercise, stress reduction, and then what supplementation they need based on our imbalances that we can find out through functional lab testing to really dive deep. But the basics, I think people forget about. What I say all the time to clients is work on what you're eating. And, are those foods give you energy? How do you feel afterwards? Looking at metabolic typing, but, really looking at, do you feel energized? Do you feel full, or do you feel bloated? You're gassy, you're burping. I mean, there's some free things that you can do that doesn't require any lab testing or any gadget. It's just pay attention to how you feel. Also, when you're eating, how you're eating, and why you're eating is what I like to talk to people about. But the what, people's like, I hear keto, you lose 100 pounds if you follow it. And there's just so much more to it. So we'll dive into, what they're eating, what's good, but also a lot of people don't have the ability to digest all that fat, and they can't digest the proteins. And then how many people have stress creating issues with their gut dysbiosis and having more pathogens in their body, H. pylori, their stomach organ. I mean, there's so much more that people don't understand. So if they're not getting results that they hear about other people are getting on social media, what can we have them do to start figuring out, okay, I want to lose weight, I want to improve performance, I want to improve the aging process. What do I do?
Yeah, great question. And so one of the things I learned years and years ago with my coach, this is going way back into the 90s, is one of these. It's called a journal. And you literally put your diet down and you write down the feedback. And do this for 2 weeks. Yeah. Write down what you ate, how you feel, levels of hunger, level of fatigue, how well did you sleep, how well will you hydrate, all that sort of stuff. And you do that for 2 weeks, and you're going to see some very distinct patterns. And it's mind-blowing and you're right, you don't necessarily need all the gadgets and gizmos. And even when I do gadgets and gizmos, which we love and they're great, there's a lot of tech out there, I like to still associate the feedback that I'm getting directly from my body with whatever the testing was. And now I can tell, where I would be on a gizmo or a gadget within usually 5 or 10% accuracy just by my biofeedback. Yeah.
But most people don't know how to do that, though. They have no clue how to listen to their body anymore. They have no connection of mind-body awareness. I'm like, oh, I don't know.
Well, they have it. They just haven't paid attention because
exactly.
we're in the attention age. It's not the information age. It's the attention age. It's what am I paying attention to? And I think the number one observation unit in the world is your own awareness. And so, as a former bodybuilder, you get acutely aware from the restrictive eating regimens and training programs about every little nuance in your body. And I've carried that the rest of my life. So it gives me a distinct advantage, but anybody can develop those abilities and capabilities in their own life just by observation, but writing things down in a journal and then looking back from a week to week basis and going, oh, geez, every time I have that, I feel kind of sick or I'm tired the next day. Let's cut that out and see what happens.
Yeah. Experiment. N=1.
Yes.
Yeah. So I know we finally got an Oura ring for Valentine's Day. I've wanted one for years, but it's just a great information that you can gain from it on what I did. Now today I'm going to wear my blue blocker glasses during the day because my deep sleep was shorter and just all this information you can get. But it's also I always want to talk to people, are you doing anything with that information you get? What are you tweaking, an adjustment, course correction can you do to be a health optimizer to make it even better? It's because you can collect all this data, but what do you do with it? I think a lot of people just get it and look at it like, oh, my sleep score is blah, blah, blah. My HRV is this, my blood sugar is that, and don't take ownership of it.
Yeah, well, I think the most important thing is start running experiments on your own. And fall in love with the journey as opposed to the outcome, and the outcomes will take care of themselves. And I think a lot of people are entering into a diet because they're very short-term outcome oriented. I need to lose 10 pounds by this wedding. I've got a high school family reunion. I was out and saw myself in a picture and I look fat and I've got Christmas coming. Whatever it happens to be is often usually it's a vanity face or an associative identity related to a certain level of performance. God, I was so tired with the kids the other day. I got to get, you know what I mean? And that's fine. That's fine. But recognize that you want to be continually running experiments in a way that you fall in love with running the experiment as opposed to the outcome. And then you'll learn. And then that's how you'll kind of take your performance beyond what you thought was possible. And you can take everything that you hear or see or read with a grain of salt, and you can kind of integrate that within your own lifestyle. The other thing is, I love this saying by Elon Musk, and that's, let's say he holds 10 to 12 very complex problems in his mind at all times. And he takes in information from other areas and he goes, oh, that's an aha. Can I apply it to my own life? And he runs an experiment with it. So you can do the exact same process with your biggest issues, whether that's metabolism or certain performance goals or weight goals or whatever that is, and say, oh, what do I expose myself to for information? I'm going to take that one thing and run an experiment for a couple of weeks and see what happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's great. I think, applying that to what people are eating, yes, we want to balance your blood sugar to burn fat. What macronutrient ratios vary per person for you to figure out on your own journey, what carbs, protein, fat can I take each day to burn fat? But I want other people go, how do you feel? Can I eat at 11 a.m., first break my fast, 11 a.m., and not be hungry until 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock? I think that's a good way to kind of figure out, what am I eating? Because people always want to know what macros of carbs, protein, fat, how many calories a day. And they want this information. And I rather just people experiment, what's your plate? Start with more protein or more vegetables and whatever. But we do metabolic typing in nutritional therapy and FDN and Check. Paul Check has us do that too. And so
Paul's
sometimes,
great. Love Paul.
But sometimes it's totally different when people think, because they think they have to be, carnivore, keto carnivore, strict carnivore, but then you get this information based on their intake forms and they'll be like, you can tolerate more carbohydrates. And so then experiment with that and make those macronutrient adjustments based on the body signaling those clues that you're getting. Yeah. That's interesting. But then let's talk about how you eat, because once we identified what foods, basically I'll sum about real food. I forgot to say that. It's real food, whatever ratio to burn fat, main word to add in there. But then the next step is how we eat. chewing our food, being in that rest to digest state, taking 3 breaths in and kind of taking a moment to reset. But one of the things have you found, and I know you guys have your company with supplements, that we should be looking at to go, okay, am I even breaking my food down that I'm eating? I'm eating all this great food, but am I even getting the nutrients I'm getting out of it? And I think that's like huge area people need to look at more.
Yeah, so right now we know that 12% of the emergency hospital visits today are related to gastrointestinal related issues. We have 100 million people on any given day that's suffering from digestive distress, and 25% of those are on permanent prescription medication. So we have a digestive issue, which is the unintended consequences of technological innovation around farming, food production, and food distribution over the last 80 years. So we have radically altered our diets, what we eat, and the metabolic costs of consuming that food, whether that is hormone dysregulation, blood dysregulation, the development of tumors and things like that. But more important, it always starts with some form of digestive distress. So in other words, some of the common ones, low HCl, acid reflux, and heartburn, very, very common. If you find that you have skin issues, oftentimes that's fat related. If you have trouble balancing your neurochemistry, that's usually proteolytic issues. In other words, you're not breaking down your proteins. If you're showing undigested food in your stools, like if it's carbohydrates or it's oily stools of fat, or it's really tough with like protein issues, then you can look at, these are indications that you're not actually breaking down, utilizing the food that you have. Now that might be one of 3 areas. It might be enzymes, it might be hydrochloric acid, and it might be probiotics. Likely it's some combination of all 3.
Yeah.
And so what you want to do is you want to looking these indicators, like if I'm sitting, like if food feels like it sits like a stone in my stomach after, probably don't have sufficient amount of enzymes. Very common because every species on the planet eats an enzyme-rich diet except humans, because we cook, irradiate, pasteurize, and process all of our food, which wipes out all the enzymes. Same thing with probiotics. Every species gets the natural probiotics associated with that food when they consume it. We've eliminated that through antibiotics, pasteurization, irradiation, and cooking. So what we have to recognize is we have to kind of rebuild the food that's going back into our bodies, because if we don't have sufficient amount of capability to break that food down, now it becomes a potential toxin. Now that food, we can't extract what we want out of it. And then this leads to a variety of dysregulation in the body over time. And so our body will adapt, but we can see that the trend is leading to more digestive distress, more, I would say, specialization. I mean, we have people like, for example, Dr. Jordan Peterson and his family, they're only eating steak every day. They can't eat anything else. They're so far gone. And so when you start peeling back the layers and optimizing your digestive capability, your range of food products and diet strategies begins to expand after you correct your ability to convert that food into the energy units and building blocks that you want. And so that's what we began focusing our company on. And then we started addressing issues. For example, so many people are clocked up, what did I say? Because they're using stimulants to keep going in a very technological advanced world. They're staring into blue light, and they're subjected to massive amounts of electromagnetic frequencies, which are draining the nervous system resources. And like magnesium, for example, is depleted across virtually everybody in North America. Forget it. We don't get it in our diet. We can't get it in our food. Our hyper-stimulated world is exhausting our magnesium stores, and a high calcium-based diet is causing problems for so many people. So by adding something like magnesium into their diet, all of a sudden, these cortisol-related issues start to drop, and the diet works better. And you think, well, how does magnesium regulate blood sugar? How does magnesium regulate neurotransmitters? Or how does magnesium fix these issues. Well, that's how it works as it's involved in over 600 different processes in the body. And if you're deficient in it, you might not be able to activate that particular pathway in order for you to, get the most out of the diet strategy you have.
Yeah, I think what I learned years ago is work north to south, correct whatever problems you've got going down low, start with your brain and start with that. But as you're saying, so much environmental, what people are doing all day, how that's impacting their digestion. Stress is on, digestion's off. And so that's why I was, stop before you eat, take 3 deep breaths in and long exhales out, just to help that reset. You kind of feel that rush mode all day long. Even if you're staying at home working, we're just kind of on. And so you have to, before you start just eating and mindlessly, you have to shift to be more mindful. And I think digestion starts up in the brain, getting that shift. But I find I have to take enzymes to eat, or else the transit time's too long and the food's just sitting there, not moving south. So there's a lot of clues, but I think people are afraid. I always get comments from clients that if I stop, if I take enzymes and digestive aids, I'm going to stop having those functions automatically in my body. So it's not, I think it's just years of, as you get older, some things aren't produced as much and we need to support it. It's not taking it away from your own body's natural processes, right?
Yeah, if you, I would refer people to a great book, and I think it's underutilized and people aren't aware of it. And it's Dr. Edward Howell's book, Enzyme Nutrition. And then he wrote another one, Food Enzymes for Health and Longevity, which is more research oriented. And he did a whole bunch of studies on everything from dogs, cats, rats, you name it. And the ones so he did 3 basic tests. One that he fed an enzymatically rich natural diet with them. One that they had 0 enzymes in their diet. And then one where they were augmenting their diet with exogenous enzymes. In other words, they were adding enzymes into the diet. Now, the animals that didn't have any enzymes did not live nearly as long and developed all kinds of issues. And by 3rd generation, this is the crazy part, by 3rd generations, the species that didn't have enzymes present in their diet, which is natural in all living organisms, 3 things happened. One, they developed massive amounts of genetic-based diseases that they didn't have in this, their predecessors, their grandparents, if you will. The second thing is they started to elicit strange sociological behaviors that weren't normal for that species. And so the cats didn't act like cats, the dogs didn't act like dogs, the rats didn't act like rats. And then the third thing was inability to procreate. They stop being able to have more offspring. And so he put forth that we have this enzyme bank account that is a limited reserve that we need to fill up when we consume food. However, when we defined food in the modern era, we didn't define food by the amount of enzymes present, the amount of probiotics present, or the amount of minerals, both trace and macro minerals. And so what happens if we've been running off a incomplete definition of food for the last 80 years, and then you got the special lobbyist group coming in there, and we're now experiencing exactly what was happening to those species 3 generations down, because that's when we changed the food supply chain radically with World War II.
Yeah, we learned all that in nutritional therapy. That's how we started the course. If anyone wants to become NTP, that's the first thing we go into, is all those different studies and the industrialization and the food companies, what happened back then. It's amazing if you really dive deep into it. And another book I'd love everyone to read is that Big Fat Surprise by Nina. I always forget her last name, but she's writing another book. She's always on Twitter. But if you really want to know kind of the industrialization and impact of political nutrition on fats, that's a fascinating book, because half of it's all the references. But anyways, the nutrition part, I think, is so important for people that are trying to lose weight, burn fat, and experimenting with being more low carb, that they struggle with digesting and breaking down their food. But what I found, it's a great all-in-one supplement. We're not here to sell supplements, but just to create awareness of the KPEC supplement and what is in that? And how do you guys come up with that formulation?
Well, it's kind of funny because me being a plant-based guy and Matt being a keto guy and being in business and friends for over 20 years, we would have these epic debates because every time I would go into a attempt to do a ketogenic diet, I would hit a certain level of fat consumption in my diet and I would start seeing the fat in my stools and I didn't feel good. And the reality was I wasn't able to metabolize the fat. And when he went on a higher carbohydrate diet, he found it very hard for him to stay on a diet long-term. He'd deal wild blood sugar springs or he'd have cravings and stuff like that. So once we learned about enzymes and stuff, we kind of realized that for whatever reason, whether it was genetics or exposure, or whatever, my body's ability to break down fats effectively wasn't that great. And so we had developed an all-encompassing enzyme that we use to advance athletic performance and brain function and recovery, which was called Magnesium. It's an all-in-one. But then when we were looking at a ketogenic, which your primary food source is fats, your primary energy source is coming from fats. And I always say that I'm a carbivore. I'm one of these lucky people that can metabolize carbohydrates very well and do very well on it. He's not. And so, it was the opposite for fats. And so he's like, okay, well, let's look at the different lipolytic pathways. And that just means the pathways that burn fats, the different types of fats and what pH levels or what they might be and all these sort of stuff. And he created Capex, which combined the proteolytic, 5 different proteolytic enzymes to break down the protein, but 4 different lipases that broke down virtually every type of fat a person can consume. So then he's like, he made it, and then he told me in the blind, here, do this. And I started doing it, and I said, okay, well, something's going on different. Number one, I seem to have a lot more energy. And what I was now able to do is I was able to deliver more fats into my mitochondria so I could burn it more effectively. And then he says, well, let's start moving to more, let's cut your carbs down, increase your fats and see how you do. Well, guess what? I busted through my fat threshold. All of a sudden, I could utilize and metabolize more fats and had the ability to do a plant-based ketogenic diet. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. So by adventing that, and there's a bunch of other ingredients. There's a biostimulator inside of it. There is another energy parameter, which improves mitochondrial energy transfer and production. And then there's also ingredients that increase, like L-carnitine, for example, that increase the shuttling of the fats into the mitochondria itself. I actually wrote a paper on that in my first year nutrition class in way back. God, that's 30 years ago now. Well, that's kind of crazy. But anyways, long story short is he created kind of the optimal ketogenic digestive aids to enhance the ability to digest, absorb, and utilize fats and proteins in your diet, which are concordant with the ketogenic diet. And it worked in me, and it worked in a whole lot of other people that, struggled with keto or wanted a little bit more boost, or were doing extended period of fasting. I actually use the Capex every morning. I take 5 capsules first thing in the morning in my fast to enhance the effects of my fast. Because I'll eat my first meal around noon. And, say like from noon to 6, noon to 7, that's kind of my food range. And the Capex really allowed me to kind of, I do my cardio in the mornings and that sort of stuff. I feel good. I have a lot of energy. I feel really focused, and I really like it for those things. And that's, that's how it worked for me. And a lot of other people are saying the same thing, whether they're on a ketogenic diet or not. Yeah. And the keto people love it. They're just like, okay, this is like next level. I'm just so much able to get more out of my high fat diet.
Well, I was promoting it a lot to my clients when it first came out, and still do. And I just think so many people try to shift to lower carb and add more protein, fat, but they don't succeed because they don't have the proper liver, gallbladder function, pancreatic enzymes, and the stomach backup. Before that, your food goes into your stomach, and they don't have the HCl to break down the protein into amino acids. And it's just this whole trickle down effect. If it doesn't start working properly at the top of the chain, it's not going to be going down too well at the lower end of the chain when it hits. So it's so essential. So I know magnesium is always a big topic. You mentioned that earlier. And with our immune systems, with chronic stress, there's always great information coming out. You guys have a really good blog and educational information on your website about magnesium, as of course with vitamin D. So why is magnesium so important for people who are, working out a lot and that are doing lower carbohydrates and have stress in their life?
Yeah. So, we kind of get that indication of what happened in World War II is that, after we dropped the bomb, all of a sudden the war ended and there was a massive change in the lifestyle of humans. People started moving to the city, manufacturing started to happen, people moved products, goods, services all around the world. There was a population explosion. Governments like, how are we going to feed everybody? There's way less people on the farms. So they started to advent monoculture farming. The monoculture farming worked for a little while. Then they started depleting the soil of the essential minerals. The plants wouldn't grow. So they started using leftover bombs from the war to add nitrogen to the soil to grow the plants. Then they had even less protein content in it because they were giving up the protein to make enzymes to try and extract enough nutrients. And the nutrient density of the food started to drop dramatically. So if you take something like wheat, at the turn of the century, the US Congress has listed that wheat was about 90% protein. This is how people in the Middle Ages could live on bread. Well, guess what? Nowadays, it's less than 7%. That's how much that food has degraded over the years. If you were to eat a peach in 1955, at that same peach today, you would need 50 peaches to make the same nutrient density of the peach in 1955. Wow. So what happened is, as the plants became weaker, they started getting diseases and they started getting problems. So they developed chemicals, herbicides, pesticides, fungicides. They threw that on the food, which interrupt the enzymatic activity of the pests. That's how it kills the pest, because if you kill the enzymes in a living organism, and all living organisms has an enzyme bank account, like the difference between stone, plants, and people is the array of enzymatic functions. And enzymes are involved in every chemical process from thinking to blinking, over 25,000 in the human body. So now we've depleted that. We've interrupted that. We're consuming nutrient deficient food. We're consuming food that has been grown with chemicals and agents, and those are going inside the body. Those are building up toxicity, disrupting our own function. Then we're getting sick. We're taking antibiotics, which are further disrupting our microbiome, which is the final stage of digestion. And so what happened, and then our soil has been completely degraded out of all magnesium. And magnesium is the control enzyme of about 600 different functions in the body. Particularly, it is associated with the relaxation response, both in muscles. So for example, as a bodybuilder, if you were low on magnesium, you'd get on stage and you would cramp. Athletes would cramp if they're sweating a lot. So if you're suffering from cramp or twitches, you're getting twitches or you're having insomnia, what's happening is your body's clocking up on the nervous system and it's not down regulating because it doesn't have enough of these minerals to clock you back down. Then there's another thing. Staring into blue lights, whether it's televisions, your phone, or computers, also has a stimulating effect from a circadian rhythm. So we throw off our circadian rhythm as well. And exposing to electromagnetic frequencies increases the amount of magnesium that is being burnt by our body. So long story short, we've depleted magnesium from our diets. And we've increased our stress loads. And what do most people do? They use a stimulant like caffeine, an over-reliance on caffeine, or even you can get into the cognitive enhancers, whether it's modafinil and Adderall and all the ADHD drugs and all this sort of stuff that people are now using to cope with this super dizzying pace of society. And both Matt and I got ourselves into trouble being crazy serial entrepreneurs and kind of amateur athletes. Now we were both at a high level of athletic career, but now I call myself an amateur, a former athlete who's trying to slow the descent into of performance parameters. and working, 12, 14 hours a day for a period of few years, we clocked out. And I remember listening to Charles Poliquin at an event, Bulletproof Conference. He gave a lecture. And of course, Charles trained gold medalists in 27 different sports, the who's in the Olympics, the who's who of professional sports. And he said that his athletes who were under these high stress environments of training at the level a professional or an Olympic athlete does were depleting their magnesium stores. So they were getting either heart arrhythmias, or they were low energy, disproportion of sleep from, high levels of cortisol. And then he started looking through the research and found that if he started giving them higher dosages of different types of magnesiums, and he was the first guy to identify that it's not just one magnesium, that different parts of the body uptook different types of magnesium, is that you could increase their ability to train harder, more often, more frequently, and recover faster because they were getting into this rest relax state. So Matt and I was like, well, this is amazing. So we went through our notes. We bought all these different magnesiums. I literally had a cupboard full. My counter was I don't know how much. I had thousands of dollars of magnesium. He had thousands of dollars. We started creating these spreadsheets, and we would track how much magnesium of each type that we could take before we got the runs. And then we would document it. And we do the next one and the next one, and we code the stuff. And so over a period of time, and we started to notice benefits from all the different types of magnesium. We noticed different ones. Some we would get the runs really early, some that we wouldn't, some that we didn't get at all. And we would clock up to super physiological dosages and going up to as high as 5-6 grams a day.
Wow.
And then we worked out all the parameters, and then we settled on 7 different types of magnesium that we felt gave the biggest range of effectiveness with the least amount of negative consequences. And we could dose down. We didn't have to take so much to get what we called the somatic effect, because you kind of get in this, when you get your magnesium levels are really good, you're kind of zen, kind of calm, kind of peaceful, things that you sleep really well, your deep sleep scores go really, it's really effective. And so we created a product for ourselves because we got tired of spending so much money on all these magnesiums and having like 10 different bottles on the cupboard. And we said, oh, well, we turned it out to the population. It's like, hey, maybe people will like this. We were not prepared for what happened. People started taking it, and we started getting all these rave reviews. Now I can sleep. I'm not twitching anymore. Mm-hmm. And people started inviting us to all these podcasts to talk about magnesium. It's like, I had no idea. I had no idea how deficient I was in magnesium. I did a Spectra cell test when I kind of crashed and burned, which demonstrated I was very deficient in magnesium. And naturopathic doctor said B12 and magnesium was an issue for me. And I addressed those 2 areas, and boom, within a couple months, I felt amazing. And well, this started happening over and over and over again. And that product then became our #1 bestseller in the entire company history.
Wow.
In a period of 12 months. And the reason is people feel an effect. They're like, wow, I really noticed the difference from this. And so that's really exciting. And we've been grateful to share that for people. And we do that everywhere we go. We always de-risk everything that we do too. Mm-hmm. If anybody buys any product from us, they try it and it's not totally blowing their mind away. We just say, okay, we'll give you your money back. Because again, going back to our original thing, we want to encourage people to do their own experiments on their health, their diets, what they want to do, how they're working. And we want to be an advocate for that, but we can't promise that everything's going to work for everybody. So we just de-risk the experiment for people because, there's a high percentage of people that are going to benefit from our offerings. And if they don't, we give them their money back. Thank you for the trust. Go to the next test and find out what works for you.
And that goes back to what we said at the very beginning, N=1. And that I keep saying that so many people think that they're getting older, they blame the aging process, and they think that this is their new normal. This is how I feel. This is just how it's going to be. I'm getting older. That's just life. And I want to say, experiment. There's things that you can take. You might, do the lab testing to figure out what exactly you're deficient in or what's out of balance. And we work on everything to optimize your health. But it could be a simple thing as magnesium or supporting digestion and breaking down your food properly and taking probiotic and healing your gut. And so many people are hesitant to do that. They'd rather just think, nothing, this is my new normal. And I always want to also say that, could you feel better? I mean, you're just settling for this feeling fine. I'm okay. But what if I could feel 10 times better. It's just so interesting to me how some people don't really, I don't know, care about themselves. I keep saying self-care is self-love. If you love yourself enough, you will experiment and try different things and try to figure out how to be a health optimizer. But so many people just rather not do it. It's like, I'm not going to waste my money. I don't want to spend. It's like, you don't care about yourself enough to do any of this? I don't get it.
Yeah, I think, well, the people listening to this podcast, though, are investing some time and effort and energy to know that. And so I want to salute and honor that and recognize and encourage them to go even further. Don't accept what's common as something that is absolute. And I believe that there is, if you want a zest for life, if you want to live your best life, is the people that I notice that are the happiest and most productive are people who have high expectations for what's possible in their life and are actively going that way. And they take all information with a grain of salt. Well, maybe that's true, maybe it's not. They stay open and flexible, and I'm going to experiment with that and see what happens. And it's a wonderful, beautiful thing, and it's great to take part in that process with people.
I know. Well, we'll put a discount code in the show notes for people to try it out. If, I know most of our listeners care about their health and about improving performance longevities. That's why they're listening. So definitely give it a try and experiment, see how you feel, and let us know. I think, key ones at magnesium, I think is important for people. I know magnesium at night before bed is good, but when do you suggest people to take your magnesium?
Yeah, a lot of people take it just before bed because they find they really notice a thing for sleep. I take it in divided dosages. I'm a guy that's, up at 6 a.m., going to bed at 12, training a couple times a day, really rocking it out. I put high demands on myself. And so I take a divided dosage throughout the day. So I take a 0.5 gram now in the mornings, 0.5 gram in the afternoons, and a 0.5 gram in the evenings. Okay. And so now going back to one of the courses that we offer on our site, we give it away for free. It's called the Awesome Health Course, 12-week double your energy. And there's a particular video in there which is based in orthomolecular nutrition, and it's called the bucket theory of nutrition. And it was developed by, I call it the bucket theory, but it was essentially the principles were developed by Dr. Linus Pauling, Dr. Abram Hoffer, and Dr. David Hawkins, who wrote the first book, Orthomolecular Psychiatry, which was treating advanced states of illness with nutrients. And they talked about taking super physiological dosages of various nutrients in a specific way in order to get the result. So to give you an example, we'll use something like vitamin C because, he won a Nobel Prize for that. So what they found is that you could start increasing the dosage of vitamin C throughout a day with a person until they broke what they call the GI barrier. Now you got the runs. So you might start off at 1 gram, then 2 grams, then 3 grams, and all the way up to 10, 15, even some people are taking 20 grams a day they could tolerate. Now, when you get the GI barrier break, you start titrating down because you've hit tolerance. Yeah. And eventually you get down to just what's called a maintenance dosage. And this is what I call the bucket theory. So imagine your reserves of every nutrient you can have is fitting in a bucket. And how much you are burning with your particular lifestyle is a hole in the bucket. And that hole may get bigger at certain points and smaller, depend on stress, life, what's going on. A lot of people's stress went up a lot this last year. So the burn rate on various nutrients were now, if you only take enough to kind of mitigate what you're burning, you never get to feel what it's like to have a full bucket. So what a lot of people have found is that you start increasing a dosage over a divided levels until you get their runs. You down regulate. And for me, that was at about 6 grams of magnesium in my case. And I would stay at 6 grams and I went back to 5. And then when I got the runs again at 5 after a couple months, I went down to 4. And then, eventually I felt really good. And then I'm like, okay, I probably don't need quite that much. And I've now settled on an amount of 1.5 grams over the course of a year. So it took me a while to fill up my bucket because I was so depleted. It took me probably 6-7 months of a higher dosage. But now I get the same benefits at 1.5 that it used to take me 5 grams because my bucket's full. Now, if I go through a very stressful period, like I'm traveling or, I'm really burning the candle at some points, I notice if my sleep starts to get disrupted or I find very short with people, I just increase by another 0.5 gram for a period of time until the whatever life situation, and then I titrate back down when that period has gone by. And so as you do these experiments, you can kind of see, there's what I call the minimum dose, the maximum dose, and then the optimal dose. And you ultimately want to get to the optimal dose for you, your lifestyle, and what you want to achieve.
That's a great tip. And it's so simple to do. You just, your bathroom experience will tell you.
Yeah. And the other thing is you can start isolating specific vitamins and minerals. So one of the great tests that you can do is you can do a Spectra cell test, which is awesome because it actually not only determines what you're deficient in, but what particular vitamins and minerals that you have a hard time absorbing and utilizing by your individual genetics or body. So let's say you've got 1 or 2 supplement or minerals or vitamins or whatever that you're particularly deficient with your biology. You're going to determine that. Well, now you can say, you know what, I'm going to do a B12 experiment, or I'm going to do a vitamin D experiment, or I'm going to do a magnesium experiment, whatever that experiment is. And you target that specific nutrient in this bucket theory strategy. And you start to see that instead of trying to take a shotgun approach, I get some information, I target what it was, I follow the same principles of orthomolecular nutrition, and I get the result that I'm looking for. Once you've done that once or twice, you completely transform of not only how you see your own life and your own capacity to change it, but also how you take in information from other diets, other experts, other philosophies, so that you can just kind of extract the gold from whatever different format and then apply it and test it in your own life. And it completely transforms the game. And then you become an expert in yourself.
Yeah, biohacking, right? That's what it is.
Yeah.
It's just,
and we by the way, anybody that, orders from our company, they'll throw in a book. I kind of explain that process in detail in the biological optimization book, some of the tests that you can use for specific areas of performance, aesthetics, or health. And you'll kind of get an overarching thing that we couldn't really cover in this whole interview.
No, it's good. I like books. No, not ebooks, I like books, because I put tabs down, I highlight things, and you kind of can figure out which kind of connects with you and your needs and goals. So I think it's great to have that. So I'll put all the links in the show notes. There's so much more to talk about, but I know we're running out of time. But anything else we want to add in that's going to happen this year, or things that we should be looking for and taking care of?
Well, yeah, our biggest breakthrough in the last little while is we actually we developed a neurological chemical optimization system with our new brand called Nutopia. Yeah. So basically, it's cognitive enhancers, 8 different products that are customized blends for each individual's unique neurochemistry that allows you to access different states of awareness, whether it's calm and creativity, whether it's social fluency, whether it's hyperfocus. We've cracked the code and kind of launched this new brand called Nutopia, which is actually customizing nootropic blends to optimize your brain performance. And it's caught all the rage on the kind of the influencers out there. They're all on this kind of secret supply from us, and we'll be releasing that, I think, probably about the time this comes out to the general public. But it's a total game changer in the neurological optimization. I think in a highly technologically advanced world that's changing so rapidly, it gives us that mental edge that a lot of us are struggling with in a digital world. You really feel it. So
I have been a personal trainer in fitness and, coaching people for 20 years. And this past year, since COVID, not personal training, not owning a fitness studio anymore, thank goodness. But being online and doing this stuff all day, I had a seminar call at 5:00 Tuesday nights, 5 p.m. I cannot focus at all. It's like, and my eyes hurt, and it's just, having to put glasses on, but just that focus, it's just new to me. And I definitely I need some neurotropic, some type of thing to get my brain to fire, because it doesn't know how to do all this stimulus from iPad, iPhone, and reading and webinars and calls. It's just crazy how our brain has to work now. So I get that is needed.
Yes.
So we'll put everything in the show notes, you guys. So make sure you check it out. Lots of free information you guys have and gifts through your website. So thank you for everything you guys are doing, Wade, over there, and keep it up.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Low Carb Athlete Podcast. If you have any questions, feedback, or topic suggestions, let us know on Facebook or at debbiepotts.net. You can help us to continue to grow by leaving a review on iTunes. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.